can't be beat, that's my Bahama land, yeah. Friends in every place, a smile on every face. Children at play, time with family today. Someone fill my plate, homemade bread, I can't wait. I can't get enough, I will always stay in touch with my Bahama land, yeah.
Rare Voice introduces Bahamaland, an unlimited nationwide calling plan for only $5 a month. So call home today and connect again with Bahamaland. Home never felt so close.
My Bahama land, yeah.
Members of the opposition want a top finance official fired after his tax arrears were revealed. A diverse approach to tax reform suggested by the Minister of Financial Services. Attorneys concerned about the removal of court stenographers from the magistrates' courts and major plans to be announced for Grand Bahama. We have those stories and more coming up tonight. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Christina McNeil, and your MB12 starts right now. Joining us, government's chief advocate for value-added tax has admitted that he has not paid property taxes in at least 10 years. Prime Minister Perry Christie hired Ishmael Lightbourne just over a year ago and designated him as a point person to lead the push toward VAT. Lightbourne says he recognizes the hypocrisy and contradiction of this situation. The opposition now wants the government to fire him. Vonique Toot reports.
The Free National Movement is calling for Ishmael Lightbourne to either resign or be fired after he recently admitted that he hasn't paid his property taxes in at least a decade. FNM leader Dr. Hubert Minnis says it sends the wrong message to the public because Lightbourne has been government spokesperson on value-added tax.
You cannot have a face that talks about the importance and the significance of the survival of your country, how important it is for you to pay your taxes. The message you send to the public is open for interpretation. They will ask the question, how can a face be asking me to pay when that face themselves have the same problem? They're not paying. What is the message that they're sending out? It's mixed messages.
As one of the chief advocates for value-added tax and coordinator of the government's VAT unit, Lightbourne has repeatedly spoken of the need for people to pay their taxes and the need for the government to introduce value-added tax. However, he has not been paying real property taxes, even though his beachfront residence on West Bay Street is only assessed at $321,000. That means his real property tax bill has only been $534 a year. The land itself is assessed at $115,200, and the house is assessed at $206,000. Because his beachfront property is assessed at such a low value, he only owes $7,743, including interest payments over the last 10 years. The FNM issued a statement calling for Lightbourne's immediate resignation, asserting that he has lost all legitimacy as the principal spokesman for VAT. However, Minnis shied away from calling for him to step down. He instead blasted the Christie administration and questioned whether officials did their due diligence.
Well, we would see whether Christie or the government truly governs. I have said repeatedly that we are a society where our laws are not enforced properly. This is an opportunity for them to do what they think is right, and the public will judge and make a determination as to whether they deserve to be the government that we have today.
F&M officials say this issue arises at a time when the Christie administration remains determined to force VAT down the throats of the Bahamian people. The party statement continues, in order for the government to preserve what little integrity it has left on the issue of tax reform, Lightbourne must be fired if he refuses to resign. Dr. Minnis says the F&M will wait to see if the Christie administration does the right thing.
I'll wait and see what how the government deals with this, because the government is on record stating that it's important for individuals to pay their taxes. We want to see whether the government is true with their words or whether they are only talk. But the decision is theirs, and I will deal with it in its entirety next week.
The opposition leader says he will address this matter further next week during his contribution to the mid-year budget debate. Reporting from the House of Assembly for NB12, I'm Voinik Jude.
And members of the business community continue to call for a delay in value-added tax implementation. Some have suggested alternatives to the tax, which they describe as regressive. Today, Financial Services Minister Ryan Pinder put forth a few additional revenue generation measures, which he believes would be reasonable and broadly accepted. High among them, the definition, regulation, and taxation of domestic gaming.
The domestic gaming industry, Mr. Speaker, maybe should take the form of electronic domestic casinos that are owned by Bahamians and a place where Bahamians can legally gamble on pre-approved and regulated electronic gaming. When a legitimate regulated domestic gaming industry, it is projected that depending on the tax structure, the government can realize anywhere between $20 and $100 million a year.
The majority of Bahamians who voted in the January 2013 gaming referendum voted no against regulating the numbers industry. However, Pinder says the Bahamas may face serious regulatory issues if the country's regulations are not brought in compliance with international standards.
I agree with the observations of the governor of the central bank. She was right. The current activities require regulation to ensure compliance with anti-money laundering requirements and to ensure there is not unregulated banking activities that are operating both in and from and accepting deposits and accepting credit. This is a significant regulatory concern.
As a result of those concerns, Pinder says local gaming operators are not able to bank their assets in the Bahamas and must instead move millions and millions of dollars to another jurisdiction. That, Pinder says, has a dramatic effect on the economic growth of the country.
I think the creation of a domestic electronic gaming industry owned by Bahamians, where Bahamians would be permitted to gamble on games approved by a regulator, the Gaming Board of the Bahamas, is worthy of consideration. The imposition of anti-money laundering regulations and requirements on these establishments consistent with international best practices would be required. The taxation of these institutions and the winnings could well result, listen to me, the taxation of these institutions and the winnings could well result in reduced taxes and a reduced cost of living for all Bahamians.
Pinder says the potential revenue made from regulating the numbers industry could significantly impact the Bahamas' fiscal standing and alleviate pressure from institutions such as the International Monetary Fund and international rating agencies. Well, meantime, Progressive Liberal Party Member of Parliament for Marco City, Greg Moss, this afternoon slamming the proposed implementation of value-added tax, warning the PLP that if it goes through with putting VAT in place, it will lose the next general election. Today, Moss laid out myriad concerns why he believes VAT is a bad idea and will not serve the interests of the nation. He called VAT an affront to the history of the PLP and called it a reprehensibly wrong betrayal of the Progressive Liberal Party's constituents. Moss suggested implementing an income corporate tax, taxing profits of foreign banks and taxing web shops in order to diversify the nation's revenue collection base. He also praised the Prime Minister and Minister of State for Finance, Michael Halkitis, for overseeing the reduction of the deficit and increased revenue collection since the beginning of the fiscal year. Members of the Bahamas Bar Association and Criminal Bar Committee expressing their displeasure with the government's decision to remove court reporters from Magistrates Court at the South Street Court complex this week. As of Monday, stenographers were pulled from the lower courts, forcing magistrates to take notes by hand. Days after their removal, it is still not sitting well with lawyers who are concerned about the effect that the lack of verbatim records could have on the justice system. During a press conference today, Bar Association President Ellsworth Johnson said the removal from the magistrates' court represents retrograde steps in the administration and delivery of justice. He added that lawyers would feel uncomfortable relying on the magistrates' paraphrased notes of the proceedings. In a report, the interim manager of the court reporting unit, Jennifer Leach, recommended that the reduction of service provided to magistrates in certain civil trials to significantly impact the availability of reporters to both reduce the backlog and maintain a satisfactory level of service in the criminal courts and the Court of Appeal. In October last year, more than 20 court reporters staged sickouts during the month of September. At the time, Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson said their absence had little impact on the justice system. Many stenographers refused to work over various issues, including payment and the lack of a career path. While the reporters have been removed from the magistrates' courts, they remain in the Supreme Court. A former Progressive Liberal Party senator may be stripped of her right to practice law over allegations that she misappropriated client funds. The Nassau Guardian understands that attorney Pleasant Bridgewater will appear before the Bar Association's disciplinary tribunal on March 5th to face allegations that she misappropriated $830,000 of a client's funds. Bridgewater resigned from the Senate after she was accused of trying to extort $25 million from American actor John Travolta following the death of his son Jet in 2009. A mistrial was declared in 2009 over concerns of leaks from the jury room. A retrial did not go ahead because the Travoltas wanted to move on with their lives. NB12 has also confirmed that radio talk show host Fane Thompson has been disbarred for failing to repay a client. Thompson, a former magistrate, was suspended from practice prior to the revocation of his license. Coming up a little later, what you can expect from the Grand Bahama Business Outlook.